Good afternoon, everyone. This is the 6th edition of Archer Talks. This is Mr. Philip Rico, one of the conveners of Archer Talks, a forum that has been organized by alumni of the De La Salle University from grade school class 61, high school class 65, and college 1970. Archer Talks is a forum that we organize precisely to provide everyone a venue to discuss matters of national interest, matters of personal interest, and professional interest. I would like to introduce the conveners of Archer's Forum, led by Bobby Claudio, who will be your host for today, moderator, Mr. Billy Del Rosario, George Gonzalez, Red Mayo, Mon Sicat, Al Santa Clara, Tony Sombinco, myself, and Mr. Noel Silva. So with this, I'd just like to start very briefly and say that we will entertain questions from the audience, from the participants. Your questions will be asked by Mr. Claudio, by Bobby. Everyone will remain muted except the panelists that includes our 6 guests or 5 guests and the conveners. So with this, I would like to introduce call on our invocator, Mr. Tony Sombing.
Thank you, Popoy. Father, our almighty and loving God, we thank you for our courageous Olympic athletes, past and present, for making us proud to be Filipinos. We thank you for giving them the strength and the heart to never give up against all odds for our country and for your greater glory. We continue to pray for their safety, well-being, and continued success in future competitions as they lift up our country and our spirits during these challenging times. Lord, give us the grace to uncover new ideas from this webinar to help further our country's sports development. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in unity with the Holy Spirit, one God forever and ever. Amen. Saint John Baptist de La Salle,
pray for us.
Leave Jesus in our hearts
Forever.
And now, may we have a minute of silence to remember and pray for our departed Olympic athletes, and their names will be flashed on your screen. This list is unfortunately not complete, but it is the only one we were able to get.
Good afternoon, everyone. Over the past few weeks, at our most difficult time for our country, our Olympic athletes have lifted our hopes, fighting their way to bring glory, pride, and inspiration to a pandemic-weary nation. Beyond the unprecedented medal count, 1 bronze, 2 silvers, and our first ever gold, our compatriots' remarkable journey have shone a light on our sporting prospects and our nation itself, our struggles, our successes, and possibilities that may lie ahead. I am Bobby Claudio of the De La Salle class 6570 and one of the conveners of the Archer Talk, and will be moderating this afternoon's session. My involvement in sports too is on the distribution and the retail business. I am the Chairman Emeritus of Quorum Holdings, which comprises Toby Sports, Runner, and Urban Athletics. And focusing now on Toby's Sports Foundation, a grassroots sports development program, and our motto is Help Kids Play. We will hear this afternoon from our sports officials from as high as the International Olympic Committee to our NSA-involved athletes. We will also hear our athletes from previous Olympics and the most recent Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Just before we start, let me just cite some of our rules. Participants who would like to raise the questions, we are recommending to use the chat button. Type your question, and I, as moderator, will be throwing the questions to the appropriate guest or guests. And we will be able to screen the questions so that we can throw them to the right guest who can answer the questions. So this afternoon, let me introduce our guests. First, Monsieur Del Rosario, Congressman 2016 to 2019. He was a Taekwondo silver medalist at the 10th Asian Games in Korea. He was also the team captain for the national Taekwondo team and the Secretary General of the Philippine Taekwondo Association. He is also the 1988 De La Salle University Sports Hall of Fame awardee. Our next guest is Mansueto Onyok Velasco.
Okay.
He is not yet present, but I will already acknowledge his participation. He took a gold medal in boxing in the 1994 Asian Games and a silver medal in the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. Third is Carlos Yulo. Carlos Yulo is a gymnastic gold and bronze medalist in the 2019 World Artistic Gymnastics Championships in Stuttgart, Germany. He placed fourth in the men's vault in the recent 2020 Olympics. We got word that he'll be late and he'll be also joining us a little later. Our fourth guest is Christine Jacob Sandejas, swimming gold medalist in the 1983. Sorry, Christine. People said no more years now. But I am forced to be factual in my introduction. So it's the 1983 Southeast Asian Games. She was also in the swimming team of the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics, but mainly participating in the 400s and the 800s, which she mentioned earlier. Of course, we have as our fifth guest is Mikey Kowanko Jaworski. She was a equestrian gold medalist in the 2002 Busan Asian Games. She was also a champion of the 2024 Paris Olympics and of the 2011 FEI World Dressage Challenge, and the first Filipina and Asian woman executive member of the International Olympic Committee, and now a member of the Coordination Committee of the 2024 Paris Olympics. Just to balance the Monsor Award from La Salle, Mikey also is an award of excellence in sports in 2005 of Ateneo de Manila. So may isang tiga La Salle, may isang tiga Ateneo. And last but not the least, and our most heralded guest this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Hidelin Diaz, who just joined us now. Welcome, Hidelin. Thank you for participating. She was the Philippines' first gold medal ever at the recent 2020 Olympics. Previous to that, she was also the silver medalist in the 2016 Summer Olympics. This year in the Tokyo Olympics, she also set the Olympic records for the 55-kilogram division and the clean and jerk at 127 for a total of 224 kilograms. She also represented us in previous Southeast Asian Games and Asian Games. So let's start. The point I would like to acknowledge Popoy and Rico for some acknowledgement for our guests.
Yeah, may I just say something extra, some additional about Heidelin? Shortly after she won, I texted her and I asked her if she could do a public service video to encourage our young people to go out and register. We have 7 million youth who need to register if they want to vote in the coming elections. And Heidelin just said yes and asked me for the script. And I took advantage of the fact that she was quarantined at the hotel. And within minutes, she came back with a good video, a very solid video, which has been doing the round. So we'd like to thank you for that, Heidelin, for your act of great public service. Thank you.
Before we start the question and answer, let me just acknowledge the organizers of this event. First, the De La Salle Class High School 65 and the De La Salle Class 70. Our partners are the De La Salle Alumni Association and the Benito and Catalino Yap Foundation through their BCYF Institute for Policy. Thank you for all the support given by these organizations. Let me now start with the questions. We will, while we are waiting for the questions to come in the chat box, we have had advanced questions from different personalities and previous guests which have sent in their questions through our text and email facilities. Our first question is addressed to Mikey. Mikey, the question here is, what are some of your thoughts on what can be done further to better prepare our athletes for international competition? Recently, in an ABS interview, I think, or article, we saw your emphasis on the need for more technology in the sports training in the Philippines. Can you share with us more about what you experience and what you think we should do further for our training in the sports field?
Well, more than saying that it's like, well, okay, first of all, good afternoon, everybody. Na-excite na sumagot. Yes, more than really saying technology, it's more scientific approach because it's really very deliberate, and athletes have to be viewed as total human beings. It's not just about what they can do when they're performing as athletes, but everything that allows them to perform that way. So whether it's a physical, psychological, or spiritual aspect, I think it has to be a holistic approach, first of all. And everything that an athlete is expected to do, everything that they're supposed to be able to perform, to be able to keep up and compete, should be something that we can somehow measure, and that we would be very deliberate in the approach. And it would differ from sport to sport and athlete to athlete. So, you know, we leave those details to the experts, especially the technical experts in the sports. But the approach will always be different, but I think it has to start to become more scientific and more deliberate.
Yes, Mikey, being in the sports business myself, we do see that particular need of using technology for athletes training, particularly in the live tracking performances. Some associations are not even using heart rate monitors, or which they can track the performance of an athlete while they are running or while they are jumping. There are other technology that can be used to perfect the movements of athletes, like muscle memory programming and such things. And I agree with you that to further develop not just the physical skills of the athlete, to make use of technology to be able to excel further, or even eliminate injuries, or not eliminate, but minimize maybe.
Minimize, yeah.
Right. Thank you, Mikey, on that. As I throw the questions, if there are any of the guests that can answer or would like to answer on the same question that I have raised, feel free to just get in and make your comments. Don't some of the questions are specific. Some of the questions can be addressed by any of our guests this afternoon. Here's another question that came in. This time it's addressed to Jacob, Christine Jacob. Can you rank by order of importance what an athlete needs in order to compete at the highest level in any Olympic sport? Is it coaching, training, regular participation in sports meets, or diet and nutrition, and maybe even physical and mental conditioning? Sorry, I gave you a mouthful of them, but maybe from your experience, what's important from the highest to the lowest in your experience?
I mean, it's hard to rank all of these because they're all important. They all have their role to play in order for an athlete to excel. I mean, we can all be good, we can all be mediocre, or we can all just hover in a certain level. But for us to really succeed, maybe like in the case of Heidelin and exceed internationally, we really need, all of these aspects from coaching. And right now, a lot of people are really talking about the mental training of an athlete. Like, if I train the same way as you, but in my mind, I know I'm better, I'm always going to come out better than you. So it's the mental strength, the physical strength. And even during my time, we've always had an issue with the diets, and they continuously change. So I think the diet right now is so much better than us eating, steak and eggs and all of these things, which they always told us to do prior to, to competing. So they change. And this is something that we also have to take note on. As Mikey said, technology is really important, coaching. I mean, they're all, you cannot just take out one from the other. You can have an amazing coach, but if you're athlete, if you yourself as a person, you don't have the training facilities, or you don't have all of these technologies or diets, or maybe I'm just not the person that I need to be a Heidelin, right? Then it's not going to happen. Or maybe I can just be bare minimum, but I am so strong, mentally tough. I can do anything. And that is where I think we should also focus on. It's really the person, the passion that stands before you. And in order for us to master that, I go back to what you have stated before, was the grassroots. I mean, we have to instill this now at a young age. We can't tell you you're so good at 18, 19, 20. I mean, we have to already brainwash you at a young age, from school, from the Palaros, from the SEA Games, and all of these things, that yes, you can be good, you can be good, you can be good. So, sorry, but I have to rank all of them number one for me.
Thank you, Christine. Now we can focus. Heidelin's name has been mentioned in the answers of some of our guests this afternoon. So maybe my next question is directed to Heidelin. First, welcome, Heidelin. We have no time to introduce to you the panels, but they're all right in front of you, and we are very glad that you were able to join us. For a while, we were not sure if Heidelin could join us. She has some her own commitments, and but she really took effort to be here to join us this afternoon. So Heidelin, itong isang tanong ng mga ano sa iyo. Do you have a sports psychologist? And if she was an important factor in your performance, did she work closely sa mga with your coach, with your trainer, and maybe the rest of the team?
Hi po, good afternoon. Yes po, may sports psychologist po ako. Lahat po sila importante. Lahat po ng team ay importante. Hindi lang po yung sports psychologist. Kasi kung hindi ako prepared, kahit prepared ako mentally, may doubt pa rin. So lahat po ng team ay importante. Kung hindi ko nakuha yung weight ko, nandun yung anxiety. So, wala. Nandun pa rin, hindi ako magiging prepared. So, lahat sila importante sa team ko. And ang Team HD, lahat po kami nagko-collaborate, nag-uusap, nagko-communicate. And ako naman, sa totoo lang, si Doc Karen from UST, taga-UST siya, pero consultant siya ng Philippine Sports Commission. Nakilala ko siya 2016, pero hindi pa kami ganun ka-close. So nakilala ko siya along the way, naging journey din. Kasi syempre as an athlete, mahirap magtiwala. Di ba? Mahirap sa akin magtiwala, lalong-lalo ng elite athlete. And ayun, ang daming pinagdaanan. Although after nung Asian Championship, na-realize ko na hindi pala talaga ako mental tough. Kasi fourth place. Then sabi ko kailangan ko mag-prepare ng mental preparation para pagdating sa laro, prepared na at maniniwala na ako na kaya kong manalo.
Hidlin yung kagabi napanood ko sa YouTube yung performance mo dun sa 55 kilograms. Binalikan ko siya. And I saw how you were focused dun sa last mo talaga, lift mo, which clinched you the gold. Pwede bang i-share mo sa amin ano nararamdaman mo at that time at ano ang confidence level mo? And siguro that for me was the highlight of that performance that you made at the Tokyo Olympics.
Para po sa akin nung last attempt ko, wala pa akong ibang iniisip. Kundi iniisip ko lang yung buhat ko. Hindi ko iniisip na para sa bayan, no? Kasi syempre, pag marami kang iniisip, hindi ka makapag-perform. Papasok ang doubt doon. So wala pa akong ibang iniisip kundi yung one motion. Then, kasi before ako magbuhat, kinausap ako ng sports nutritionist ko na you're prepared, Hay. So, psych up na ako. Then, hinawakan ko yung medallion. Then, miraculous medal. Tapos, nagpaparemind kasi yung sa akin na lahat ng tao nagpa-pray para sa day na yon. Then, pumasok ako doon na walang doubt. Aaminin ko po, the whole preparation, may takot pa akong nararamdaman. Although maganda performance ko sa laro, syempre natatakot ako kung ano magiging resulta. Pero at the end of the day, I just surrender it to him. And I just, lahat kami ng team, sinabi lang namin na we will do our best, I will do my best, and God will do the rest. So, ayun, sobrang thankful ako kay God na na-execute ko ng maayos and binigay ko sa kanya lahat.
Thank you, Heidelin. Next question can I address now to Monsieur Del Rosario. In your opinion, what are the top 5 individual or team sports where Filipinos can excel in and be competitive internationally at the highest level? For example, is it in athletics? Would it be in martial arts or sprints or long distance or jumps? With your experience, Mansoor, we'd like to hear from you and your experiences and on this aspect.
Good afternoon, first of all, first and foremost, to everyone listening. Ang ganda ng mga sagot nila, ni Mikey, ni Christine, ni Heidelin. Tama po lahat ng sinabi nila sa mga tanong nyo, yung mga sagot nila. Each one of them emphasized and explained it really well. Going back to the question for me, as I have witnessed being chef de mission in the 2017 Asian Indoor and Martial Arts Games in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan for 3 weeks. Before going to the games, the Philippine record was 5 medals. And they were saying it would be very tough to break the medal haul of 5 medals and bring home 6 medals to 7 medals to the country. When I was there, this is the latest that I have experienced. So compared to my time in the 80s, in 85, 82, 84, 86, 87, 88, when I was fighting for the national team, the Filipino athletes' talent, I think, has changed a lot. And in the 2017 competition, Heidelin was with me there. She can vouch for it. I witnessed a lot of in the Asian level against 68 countries that we did well in of course weightlifting. Heidelin won a silver medal there. We did well in jiu-jitsu. The 2 ladies won 2 gold medals there. We won 14 silvers. I can't remember all the winners, but we won also 14 bronze medals. What I see is when it's individual competition, parang the Filipino athlete does better than a football team, than a basketball team, than a soccer team. I mean, as Heidelin was saying, the fight is individual, solo fight. Although you're together with the team, your team is cheering you, but you're performing on your own. And there's no one to blame except you if you lose. And if you win, the glory is yours. Unlike when you're in a team, you have to depend on your teammates if they're on top condition and performing the same way you're performing that day. And if one of them is slacking, it affects the team's performance. So the team competition is harder to achieve a win than an individual competition. Now, any sport, I believe, individually, where we compete in, I think we will do much better than a team. That's my personal opinion. I mean, going to the Olympics, you see the 3 boxers fought in the ring and they won medals. Heidelin won a gold. In the previous Olympics, it's basically swimmers, track stars, individual athletes do much better in the Olympic Games, in the World Championships. Sad to say, our basketball team, as much as we love basketball, I mean, I myself play basketball every now and then, basta 55 and 60 years old division, I'm good with that. The last team that we had in the Olympics was 1972, the time pa of sila Freddie Webb. So it's been a long time, and we've been trying, and we never make it. So I think we should focus more on individual sports. The leaders of sports, I think, should focus more, because the Filipino, I believe, has really the talent. You back him up, you back her up, you give her the training facilities, the coaches, the technology, you give him the proper nutrition, the mental approach to the game. The coaches are very important, the trainers. I know the Filipino athlete can excel. I've witnessed it, because we brought home 30 medals, and they were saying it was impossible to break 5 medals. And Heidelin was one of them there in that game village. We were together for 3 weeks.
Since binanggit mo, Monsor, yung individual sports, let's now go to boxing. Nandito sa atin, kasama natin si Onyok Velasco. Onyok, ibahagi mo naman sa amin ang pakiramdam mo sa oras ng attempt ng medal mo na nakuha sa silver. Maraming mga bata na nakikinig din siguro sa atin. And since that was 25 years ago, they may not have experience the same jubilation na saya namin na nakuha mo yung silver na boxing noong 1996. So, ibahagi mo naman sa amin kung anong pakiramdam mo nun at paano mo nagawa.
Ayun. Ayun, nauna po, good afternoon po sa inyong lahat.
Good afternoon.
Po, sa lahat po na nakikinig. Ang ano ko lang din po yung experience ko po nung pa-silver na po. Una-una po, parang wala lang po, yun yung parang hindi lang po Olympics yung laro namin. Kasi nga, pagka sinabi ng Olympics, parang yung pressure po nandun. Kaya nga, di ba sabi nga ni Idilin, kinakabahan din po siya sa laro na yun. Hindi lang natin nakikita, no? Ganun din po sa akin na sabi ng coach ko nga, si Kuya Boy, isipin mo na National Open lang yung laro natin. Wala pang Olympic, gano'n. Kaya parang yung silver medal na yun, parang wala pa sa isip ko po na naka-silver na ako sa Olympics. Yun ang iniisip namin. Kasi pag iniisip mo na Olympic yung paglalaruan mo, parang yung pressure mo kagad na doon na parang yung lahat ng mga malalakas na kalaban mo nang doon. Kasi hindi naman basta-basta makapagdating ng Olympic yan kung hindi sila malakas. Lahat yan ni panglaban. Kaya yun yung motivation siguro ng kuya ko na isipin mo na hindi to Olympics, National Open lang, yung kalaban mo, mga province natin, gano'n. So, gano'n, nung dumating sa punto na naka-silver na ako na sana gold sana, doon na po yung medyo masaya na medyo malungkot kasi nga sayang, isang akbang na lang gold na sana. So, sa gano'n pa man, decision is decision. So, tanggapin natin kasi sports nga tayo eh. So, kung ano yung binigay sa atin, tanggapin na lang natin na silver tayo. Pero gano'n pa naman, talagang masaya ako nun kasi matagal din tayo naka-silver din ulit. Talos kay Anthony Villanueva pa noong 1964 pa siya eh. Nung silver, tapos 1996, bago tayo naka-silver ulit. Kaya medyo matagal din. Kaya medyo masaya din ako nun. Yun lang po din yung experience ko po.
Onyok, may isang tanong din dito sa isang participant natin. Pagkatapos mo raw makamit ang medalya sa Olympics, may plano ka bang ipagpatuloy ang boxing career mo? And kailan, anong plano mo dito? Of course, sabi ko, tanong ko din daw, sabi ko, 25 years na yun.
Baka kala nila si Carlo Palam ako hindi ako si Carlo Palam.
Siguro hindi naman siguro sa pag-participate but maybe yung coaching at saka pag maturuan yung mga bata ng atleta natin on how to pursue a boxing career, di ba?
Hindi, nandiyan pa naman ako po. Sa totoo po, nandiyan pa rin naman po ako sa sports. Consultant monitoring po ako ng Philippine Sports Commission. And then, at the same time po, nag-develop po kami ng mga grassroots ng mga kabataan. Doon po kami nagsisimula po. Di-develop namin, pinapalaro namin sa mga children's games, palarong pangbansa, hanggang Philippine team sila. Doon po yung namin talaga, target din namin. Yun yung program po ng Philippine Sports.
Okay. Natatawa tuloy si Monsor. Baka tanong ko rin sa kanya.
Baka maglaro din to.
Hindi, ayoko na magsalita. Andyan si Onyok eh. Mas maganda siya magkwento eh. Dahil, anyway, nakuha na ni Onyok premyo niya. Yun lang naman ang pinaglaban ko noon eh. 25 years, pero nakuha niya yung premyo niya after 25 years.
Ano ka ba, brother Mon? Pinangakuha niya na gustong patuparin pa rin.
Sige na lang. Sige lang.
I-shift natin ngayon ang usapan sa training kasi kaninang umaga may nabasa akong article, Heidelin, that you may be on your way back to Malaysia at magsisimula ka na ng training mo ulit. Baka unless it's confidential or may preparasyon ka na gagawin, pwede mong i-share sa amin kung ano ang next plans mo ngayon. 2024 Paris Olympics is just 3 years from now. So baka pwede mong share sa amin.
Kinakabahan ako sa
Walang
Paris 2024.
Walang pressure.
Kinakabahan po ako.
Wala kami inaano na kailangan siguro gusto lang ng mga tao marinig kung looking forward sila kung talagang nandun ka pa sa 2024.
Ah, ah, sa totoo lang po, syempre as an athlete, nilook forward ko yun. Pero ayun nga, mahirap yung qualifying sa Olympics. Di po madali. And ayun nga, titignan ko kung kaya pang magsakripisyo, kaya pa ng utak. Syempre kasi kailangan talaga yung focus, then kung kaya ng katawan. Then siguro next hanggang titignan ko po kasi sa Asian Games kung kaya manalo. Then sa Olympics po kasi depende pa. Depende kasi may problema pa sa IWF Then titignan din po kung paano yung qualifying. Baka wala yung weight ko. Titignan ko kung may chance ako manalo kasi syempre sayang, di ba? Sayang yung mga pinaghirapan kung walang chance manalo.
Whatever it is na plano mo, nandiyan kami behind you to support you. Kung ano man yung decision mo, walang pressure na fit ka ulit or you just simply pursue a coaching career or a training for your kids. Nandiyan kami behind you to support you in this endeavor. Back to you.
Abi, may I jump in? Kalo Yulo has checked in. He's here already.
Nandiyan na ba?
Oh, from gymnastics.
Oh, great. Welcome. Na-mention. I'll give you a few minutes muna to catch, makinig muna sa ano. I will just ask a question first to Mikey and then I'll get back. Balikan kita, Kaloy. Mikey, there's a question here, this time from the perspective of the International Olympic Committee. We heard that from some athletes from some countries are now clamoring that they be paid in participating in the Olympics. Some sort of a professionalism aspect of sports participation. Are there any discussions or development on this in the IOC? And how do you think this will affect Filipino or Asian Olympic participants?
No, Tito, that's not being discussed right now. And in fact, 90% of all the revenues of the IOC are being given back to the Olympic movement, which includes to the different national Olympic committees and the different international federations at their discretion to how this will be trickled down to the athletes. So it's not in the Olympic spirit actually to tell athletes come to the Olympics so we can pay you a fee. That's it. We're made up of amateur athletes supposedly in some sports. Some professionals are allowed to compete. Pero hindi siya yung type of multi-sport competition na sinasabi na bayaran nyo kami para mag-compete kami dyan. So at the moment, no, that's not something that's on the table.
Great. Can you also tell us more about the Olympic Solidarity Fund? Kasi yan na nga ngayon yung, I think even the IOC has increased the allocation for this Solidarity Fund to be able to share more to the different countries to boost their Olympic goals and training of athletes. Maybe you can share with this Solidarity.
Sure. This is one of the greatest sources of pride of the IOC is to be able to have a very strong Olympic Solidarity Fund. And most of the funds of the IOC does go through this. Everything that goes back to the Olympic movement can go through the continental federations, the different, as I mentioned, NOCs and IFs. Those are more, let's say, of a standard contribution by the IOC. But this Olympic Solidarity Fund has a little bit more flexibility for let's just say, for example, in the situation of the Philippines, for the national Olympic committees, where we can propose the projects that we think will benefit and for athletes to be scholars of the Olympic solidarity. So depending, let's say, on
what the athlete is aiming for. They would get maybe $600 a month, personal po yan, na mapupunta sa kanila for them to spend the way they want to spend it. And then the NOCs can propose different programs, which are at this point, because before there was some kind of a menu of what kind of programs you can avail for, and then through the NOCs, the different athletes or the different national federations would request and apply. But now it's a lot more customizable because the IOC recognizes that different countries will have different needs. So what happens is that there's always some constant communication between the IOC and the NOCs to be able to determine what kind of project will be most effective and most beneficial depending on what the goals are of the country, ultimately, of course, leading to participation in the Olympic Games.
Great, great. Let me get back now to Kaloy, Yulo. Kaloy, you have settled down. There's a question here. Anong natutunan mo nung huling laban mo sa katatapos lang na Tokyo Olympics? At kung sakali, ano ang gagawin mong kaiba para magwagi sa susunod mong competition?
Pwede pong pakiulit po yung tanong. Una po, nakalimutan.
Yung una is, anong natutunan mo sa huling laban mo katapos ng Tokyo Olympics? Of course, nakita namin yung performance mo. It was almost perfect. As you said, it was the landing that was the most difficult part or did not materialize the way you wanted it. Paano mo mag-usam. Pero kung sakali, anong gagawin mong iba para you can continue to excel in your performance, sa performance mo?
Pwede ko pong unahin po yung kung ano po yung natutunan ko.
Sige, sige.
Madami po akong natutunan, which is yung araw-araw na training, sobrang halaga po talaga siya. Dapat nakakonekta yung training sa competition din po. Of course, merong training na minsan light lang, pero dapat yung kapag kunwari mag-evaluation po kami. Parang competition style po yung ginagawa ko kasi kapag ganun na po yung araw. Like, 2 months before po, nag-routine na po ako bago mag-competition po. So, hindi po naging maganda din po yung sa training ko. Yung iba po, like, okay lang siya, pero hindi siya nakakasatisfy po. So,
alam ko pinaghirapan mo yun kasi yung second attempt mo, you got the highest, ito ang highest na point doon. Kaya you had the skills and the potential for it.
Sa vault po kasi, palagi ko na po yung ginagawa. Like, parang normal na din po siya sa akin. Yung first vault lang po medyo mahirap po siya talaga. Nagkaroon din po ako ng problema doon. Kaya hindi din po maganda yung first vault ko ng finals po.
Babalik ka na ba sa training mo para magprepara para sa 2024 Paris Olympics?
Last week pa po ako nag-start mag-training po.
Oh, yeah. I heard nasa Japan ka ngayon. Tama ba? Oh. Maraming salamat sa taking time para makasama ka namin.
Maraming salamat din po sa pagkakita po. Maraming salamat.
Nag-training ka na ngayon. Nag-start ka na ng training mo.
Last week pa po ako nag-start. Kakatapos lang din po ng training ko po ngayon.
Anong next international competition mo?
May national competition, World Championships po sa October po.
October. We wish you luck. Nandun kami para sumuporta at mag-cheer sa'yo. So, balitaan mo kami kung mga balita or developments dyan sa training mo. Maraming salamat, Kaloy.
Maraming salamat po.
Okay. Let me go back to Christine, and maybe I'll address it to all the athletes at saka pati din si Mighty. One of the biggest question in any sports development program is siyempre may grassroots component. Importante yung grassroots for me, no? That's why our company, Toby Sports, focuses on grassroots. Because we feel that if we focus simply in looking for elite athletes, yung mga magagaling niya, there's just not enough material to choose from. So, to support an elite program, kailangan meron kang well-developed grassroots program para may supply line ka. Diba? Maski anong sports, maski anong level, maski walang medalya, walang a grassroots component is important. Do you agree with me on this? Because sometimes we have problems in determining kanino bang responsibilidad yung grassroots. Of course, nandiyan yung private sector because sometimes maliliit ang budget nila, yun lang ang kaya nila. Should it be the government? Should it be the companies? The private sector. So, what can you share about a successful overall and comprehensive sports development program? Palarong pambansa lang kagad ba? Tapos Olympics na? Share that. Go ahead.
Okay, you like to all of these big questions, and you like me to rank and choose which is better. Why do I get questions? But anyway, I do agree with you in terms of grassroots. And we in Philippine sports, we've been talking about this for years, but it doesn't seem to have caught on. We can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but until we actively do something to help our grassroots, our young ones, kinder, grade school, those are the ones that we have to develop. Where? Okay, first, who? Everybody should chip in. Everybody should help. Not only the government, not only the private sector, not only the parents or the barangay, but it should be like a community. In order for us to excel, we need a big base. So starts with the school. The kids are in school. You want them to be, sorry, Heidelin, I'm going to really abuse your name here, but you have proven to us that there are no limits, okay? So you want to be a Heidelin. Where do you start? I mean, you have to start in school. And you have to get not just regular, but PE teachers, but somebody that can really inspire and help them want to become a Heidelin or want to become a swimmer, or want to be a Leche de Vega or El Marmuros. But most of these schools, unfortunately, don't even have the facilities, or even a venue for them to excel, or we're stuck, sad to say, maybe just volleyball or basketball because, they can do it anywhere. But once you have solved our grassroots, you will have your pick. And you're going to farm. I mean, it's really basically farming athletes, which is, we have been lucky. We have found, exceptional athletes, but we have never farmed them. I have daughters that are into tennis, a son that's into soccer. I've been to the Palarong Pambansa. And then what happens? It stops. But for these people in the provinces, most especially, where we find a lot of our talents, sports is a way out. I mean, this is their way. You see Heidelin, with where she is now. I didn't come easy. She had to work, she had to sacrifice, but eventually it paid off. And she has houses, and she's able to show a lot for it. And people are going to look at that. Oh my gosh, can I be like her? Because I really want to help my family. I know I have the potential to be well. But these are already kids at a certain age. But if you start them when they're so much younger, oh my gosh, I mean, we won't have to rely on our overseas athletes. Because why don't we grow our own? Why is it? I know it's easier said than done, But if we can actually cultivate, farm our own athletes, we are going to be so much better than where we are now. And I know Monsur and Mikey and Onyok especially, you guys have a lot to add to this. But yes, to Toby's and all these sporting places, yes, let us encourage and help our athletes, not only from the private schools, but we really have to dig deep. In the Barotac boys where they play soccer with no shoes, they are the talented ones, but they are never, ever discovered. They are left there in the province, unfortunately. But we have to get them, and we have to cultivate and take care of them. And once they feel how loved they are and how special they are, everybody's going to want to get into sports. Everybody's going to want a piece of the pie. And we're going to have more medalists. And we're going to say, what did you guys do? I mean, something that we actually have to take an active role, not just talk about it and dream about it, but we have to start now. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sabi nga nila, Christine, marami pa raw paalam dyan, Yulos, Jacobs, Monsurs, Heidelin, marami pa dyan ng mga nag-aambisyon o nananaginip. Wala lang silang pagkakataon to be able to show their wares. And maybe let's hear from a short answer from Monsur and Mikey, and then I will go to the next portion of that question.
Well,
Monsur,
Christine perfectly said it. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. She's a very well experienced athlete. She was in the Olympics before me. She was in the 84 Olympics. I was in the 88. I mean, I wasn't even Monsur yet in Taekwondo. Christine Jacobs was swimming already. And she started at a very young age. I started in Taekwondo at a later age, in high school already. And it was an accidental thing that happened to me. But what Christine said about grassroots, about preparing them, exposing them, the facilities, if we have them, the proper coaches, the kids that you can fuel the fire in them, for them not to feel parang dehado ako porque I'm less fortunate. No, pagdating sa ring, whether you're fortunate, come from a fortunate family or less fortunate, pag tungtong dyan, pareho lang kayo. It's the skill that will keep you alive and the will that you want, the determination if you really want to win. Now, if these kids are given that opportunity, we can discover 1,000 Onyo. There's plenty there. I've seen it. I go around the provinces. I've been from Region 1 to 14, developing Taekwondo in all the parts of the country. And I've seen talent, but it's not nurtured. Like Christine said, it has to be cultivated. You have to expose them. And it's one way of taking them out of their, yung mga tambay na walang magawa sa buhay, iinom na lang, sisigarilyo na lang, magdadrugs na lang kasi walang magawa. Sports is an alternative activity for them that can be constructive in their life, and they can be constructive members of society who can influence the next generation. I'm very happy Heidelin won the gold. I thought I would never see it in my lifetime. Now, she is the one that can influence the next generation. All these other athletes that won the silver medal and bronze medal, they can influence the next generation. I'm tired of influencing the next generation. Sometimes ako pa rin ang hinahanap sa Taekwondo. Sabi ko, matanda na ako. Get the younger ones to influence them because they can connect to the next generation. But I believe that if we have that, I swear, we're gonna do amazing things in the coming international competitions that we will participate in. Christine, hats off. Well said.
Mikey, your take on this? Grassroots development.
When we talk about grassroots development, I think that we have to realize that it actually serves more than one purpose. So we can say that it has to do with talent identification, but at the same time, it has a lot to do with sport values. What does a person learn just by participating or practicing sport? And these skills that are developed just by playing are actually nation-building tools. But before we can talk about that, we have to first talk about accessibility. Where can a person play sports? How can a person learn sports? Who's going to teach those people, children who are playing sports, what the rules are and who will supervise them? Once upon a time, we had the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports. And now we don't have something as far-reaching as that, where you have the school system that has the responsibility also of sports. That's not something that we have now in a system as deeply ingrained as the schools, right? Especially the public schools. We have to be able to give that attention and the value to sports as this nation building tool, so that we're not only thinking all the time about medals and how only a gold medal seems to be important. And that's isa yun sa mga hugot ko bilang atleta noon eh. Kasi marami naman tayong dinadalang, di ba, we represent our country in multiple occasions and opportunities, pero parang minsan hindi naman masyadong na-appreciate kung hindi siya talaga nice and shiny medal, di ba? But you know, when you get to that level also, you need someone to notice the potential of these talented athletes. And then once you're able to identify who those individuals or teams are, and probably individuals, as Monsieur said earlier, it's also a matter of, when you talk about team sports, it's being able to put the right people together, diba? So now that you find someone who's talented, who's going to help turn that talent into a real skill? Because we will not win on talent alone. It has to be turned into skill. And then we have to lay out our expectations. Do we want to win Olympic medals? Do we want Asian Games, SEA Games, or what, diba? That's what I mean when I say we have to be deliberate about our efforts. Hindi natin pwedeng sabihin suntok sa buwan. Hindi tayong pwedeng sumigaw na, kaya mo yan. Diba? When we have our athletes fighting, we shout, we say, kaya mo yan, humugot ka from deep inside. But everyone that we compete against, they also have that passion and that drive. So, you know, there has to be an appreciation now of how much do we need, because this is our plan, because we believe this is what is going to get our athletes to be performing. And then we have to be able to measure success at different levels, because it's not always only at the top level that we can say that we're successful. Not everybody can be an Olympian. With the population of athletes all over the world, there's only a very small percentage that becomes an Olympian. And every Olympics, Summer Olympics, 10,500 athletes only. How many billions of people are there in the world? And then how many medals do we give out? So we cannot say just because hindi ka umabot doon, hindi naging importante kung saan mo binigay ang buhay mo. Because the kind of person that you become by being a good athlete that practices friendship, respect, and excellence, you will bring this to your workplace, you will bring this to your family, you will bring this anywhere you are and contribute just because you had the experience of being an athlete with a goal.
Great. Thank you, Mikey. Well, the next question that I received is that much has been said about Heidelin's historic gold medal, but you were the first one on the scene right there on the awarding stage in Tokyo. To Mikey and Heidelin, nagulat ba kayo na parehong Pilipina ang nandun sa stage to receive the Philippines' first ever gold? And ano daw ang sinabi ni Mikey kay Heidelin when she was awarding the gold? Ano naman ang sagot mo, Heidelin? Maybe Heidelin first. Nakapwa Pilipino yung...
Before ng laro ko, before po ng laro ko, nakita ko na po si Miss Mikey. And nandyan na po si Miss Mikey after kong manalo ng, kahit before manalo ng Rio Olympics. So, nung makita ko siya, syempre sobrang saya. Nung nakita ko siya na habang sa presentation pa lang eh. And hindi ko din inakala na nandun siya sa awarding. Ayun, nagpapasalamat ako. Pero nakalimutan ko yung buong words na sinabi ni Miss Mikey kasi sobrang nasa cloud moment pa ako, pero talagang nagpapasalamat ako sa kanya.
Kinakabahan ako nung time na yon kasi sabi ko, doon ako pinaupo sa harap, di ba, Hides? So kinakabahan ako kasi sabi ko, ano kayang magiging reaction ni Heidi pag nakita niya ako? Makakatulong ba na nandito ako sa harap or hindi, di ba? Parang ako yung mas naka-conscious. Ayokong tingnan si Heidi kasi you never know, di ba? Bawat athlete iba. Yung iba gusto nila, chini-cheer sila. Yung iba gusto tahimik lang. So sabi ko, sana hindi ako makagulo dito. Although, syempre, confident naman ako with Heidi's, mental focus as an athlete that at at a certain point, mabablock out na lahat niyan, di ba, Heids?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. And there are many other questions that, although some of them are a repeat, no? So we have to go through. I'd like to invite the other panelists if they have any specific questions that they would like to ask.
Bobby, this is Billy. If
Yes,
I may,
go ahead.
just following up on Mikey's last comment, I think there were a number of questions asking about the fact that this was a very different Olympics in the sense that there was no audience, and there were questions which we might want to ask Kaloy and Heidelin. How did this affect their performance? Was it for the better or for the worse that there was no audience?
Tito, that's a great question. Honestly, I haven't asked them, but I want to hear the answer. Kung ano ba yung sagot doon, the effect on them of not having spectators in the stands.
Maybe we can ask Kaloy because Kaloy, nandiyan ka pa ba?
Yes. Nandito pa po.
Yeah. Tinatanong ano daw epekto nung walang audience. Kasi dito sa SEA Games sa Manila noon pinatahimik ko pa yung audience noon dahil hindi ko pinundag na
Parehas lang din po. Parang ano din po, like, may audience pa rin po kasi ayun po yung nai-imagine ko every time na magte-training po ako na malaki yung stage yun. Maraming tao. Kaya parang normal lang din po. Like, parehas lang po nung na-imagine ko before ako pumunta din po.
Okay. Si Heidelin?
Yeah, I did.
First po, gusto ko lang sabihin, syempre kakaiba tong Olympics, Tokyo 2020 Olympics, kasi nasa pandemic tayo eh. Na-experience ko na 2008 Olympics, 2012 Olympics, 2016 Olympics. Ang ganda ng opening. Maganda din opening ngayon. Pero siguro, mas nakakaiyak this time. Kasi parang, pagpunta pa lang namin sa Tokyo 2020 Olympics, iba na eh. Umiyak na ako na parang, akala ko imposible na. Pero naging posible. Tapos nung opening ceremony, ang ganda, nakakaiyak. Hindi namin ito makakalimutan. Hindi lang dahil nanalo ako ng gold medal, kundi dahil may nagawa nila eh, kahit may pandemic. Thank you IOC. Then, ayun nga, anong effect sa akin sa laro? Sa totoo lang, mas advantage sa akin. Mas advantage sa akin kasi hindi ako na-distract. At although sanay naman ako na maraming tao, kasi ako as an athlete, masyado akong focus. Wala o meron, okay lang. So, hindi siya naging malaking kabawasan sa akin. Ang importante, nakalaro kami. Yun ang pinaka-importante po.
Bob, pwede ba magtanong uli ako kay Kaloy?
Sige, go ahead. Go ahead.
Kaloy, minsan ko si Cynthia Carion, yung presidente ng asosasyon nyo, nandito siya. At binabanggit ni Cynthia na siguro isa sa mga pangangailangan mo ng panahon na yon, yung katulad nung meron si Heidelin, yung sports psychologist, si Karen Trinidad. Yung ba ay nagkakaroon ng parang epekto sa'yo? Yung pangangailangan na yon?
Actually, wala naman din po. Sakto lang po. Kasi kami po, nila Coach Manilin po, like sarili po namin, nag-aaral din po kami like, sa food, And sa mental po, like, yung therapist ko po, like, nandun po siya, hindi lang para, like, ayusin yung katawan ko, like, hindi lang po ganun. Yung mental health ko din po, pati yung health ko po. Like, one time nga po, nag-try din po akong maging vegetarian po eh. Kasi, feeling ko, like, may advantage po ako kapag ayun po yung tinitake ko. But, hindi po siya effective para sa akin. So, bumalik po ako sa dati naming plano po.
Okay, ilang buwan ka nang hindi umuwi, ano?
2 taon na po.
2 taon na. At ikaw ay tutuloy pa sa susunod na mga competition, no? Meron yatang darating na world competition.
Apo, meron na po.
Hindi ba ito nagkakaroon ng epekto sa'yo na gusto mo na muna magpahinga? O para makapagplano, makapagmuni-muni o whatever?
Wala na. After po ng Olympics, wala po. Like, yung next step na po yung naiisip ko, hindi ko na po naiisip yung magpapahinga ako na isang buwan, isang linggo. Kahit isang araw, ayoko po eh. Bumalik nga po agad ako after nung pag-alis namin sa Olympic Village po.
Okay. Meron pa ako, Bob, kay Heidelin. Siguro, I think Mike is it. Again, merong balita, Heidelin, na ito ang International Federation nyo ay nagkakaproblema ngayon sa mga ibang issues. Pinakauna na dyan yung doping. So, of course, hindi lang naman sa weightlifting kung may problema yung issue na yan, no? Sa ibang sport din. Kaya nga yung Russia ay medyo hindi nakalahok bilang Russia kung hindi Russian Olympic Committee. Ano ang iyong pananaw at anong iyong experience dyan sa issue na yan, sa doping na yan, Heidelin?
Para sa akin, sir, dapat lang may ganun may rules para sa doping kasi syempre kailangan fair play ang labanan sa Olympics. And syempre, as an athlete, mas nabigyan tayo ng advantage doon. Kasi syempre, malinis tayo wala tayong ginagawa. So, mas advantage yun sa atin. So, yung sa iba lang, syempre, disadvantage yun sa kanila. Pero mas okay yun Mas na-highlight yung galing ng atleta pag nagta-train hard talaga sila at malinis sila.
Yun na nga yun ang sinasabi nun, Heidelin, na ang Pilipinas, hindi natin ginagawa yung doping dahil unang-una, bawal. Susunod, ito parang joke na mahal. Wala tayong pera para dyan. Kaya hindi natin ginagawa yan. Kaya alam mo na rin ang sagot. Yan ang umiiral sa sports community. Hindi namin ginagawa. Wala kami yan Wala kami pampara.
Sir, sorry. I have a question for Heidelin because one of the issues also in the Olympics was the transgender weightlifter. So I wanted to get her input as well on how she felt about it in terms of allowing transgenders to participate in sports, maybe such as track and field, which was also a big issue, and most especially weightlifting. Hi, what's your take on that?
As long as po kasi may rules and regulation galing sa IWF or sa IOC, nire-respeto namin yun. Kasi at the end of the day, ang IOC may rules and regulation yan As an athlete, sumusunod po kami doon. And wala akong karapatan para i-bash. Kasi ang dami ginajudge siya na hindi ka dapat maglaro. Pero karapatan ng bawat atleta, kahit anong gender. Kasi yung sports, wala naman gender So karapatan namin lahat tayo maglaro sa sports. As long as sumunod siya sa rules and regulation ng IWF.
Do you think that there would be an advantage for her compared to somebody like you in the same weight category, having been once male or still is male or
Hindi ko alam pero nakita ko yung resulta ng laro niya. Na zero siya. Na zero siya sa laro and siguro naging pangit yung mental preparation niya dahil naging alam mo yun na nagpa-apekto siya sa lahat ng bash na grabe yung judgment nung binigay sa kanya gusto niya lang naman maglaro. So, ayun, Di ko masabi. Di ko masabi kung ano maging epekto nun sa kanya. Pero sana hindi natin siya i-bash. Kasi gusto niya lang din naman maglaro eh.
Sige. Bob, pwede magtanong kay Onyo uli?
Sige. Go ahead.
Okay. Onyo, kumusta uli? Alam mo si Onyo, medyo nabantayan ko. Dahil kasi nung panahon ko na sa PSC, nagwagi si Onyok ng Atlanta at nandun kami noon. Anyway, ano ba ang ano mo ngayon? Anong yung tumutulong ka ba sa mga ibang boksingero, sa ABAP, for example? Alam ko si Roel, yung kapatid mo, nandun, no? Pero ikaw, anong itong official, aside from being a consultant sa PSC, ano naman ang pinag-aabalahan mo sa sports ngayon?
Ano din, sir, consultant din po ako dun sa boxing. Tapos sa consultant monitoring din po ako sa Philippine Sports. Parang dalawa yung trabaho ko po. Yun po. Sa Philippine Sports, nag-develop po kami ng mga grassroots ng mga kabataan. Tapos at the same time po sa Philippine team naman sa boxing, consultant din po ako doon. Tumutulong din po ako.
Okay. So in other words, yung hilig na boxing, kuminsan ba pag nakikita mo yung ring, gusto mo umakyat ulit sa loob?
Of course.
Hindi naman siguro, sir, parang pinapaubaya ko na dun sa mga kabataan.
Yan si Monsuro, sabi pag nakikita yata
Si Monsur po, lagi po yan Parang gusto na nga lumipat yata sa boxing yan Kikita ko.
Pag nakakakita yata nakakakita ng mat ng taekwondo, gusto magsuot uli ng uniform nila.
Ay, grabe po yan. Kahit basketball po kami, sinisipa yung kalaban.
Pinagkahalo dalawang sport.
Iba pa rin yung ang killer instinct ni Brother Monsor. Talagang nandun pa rin yung taekwondo niya.
Maybe Bob, si IOC representative, si Mikey might want to comment on those matters raised by Christine about the transgender athletes, no? Mikey,
what sort of discussions are being done at the IOC level on that?
Yes, there are discussions and they're all science-based, and we are currently updating those rules when it comes to transgenders competing. But the main partner in this topic is the international federations. Kasi sila yung mga nakakaalam dun sa mga technical matters related to their sport. So just as an example, World Athletics, di ba, Tito Popoy, meron silang required na testosterone level. So if you're going to compete in the women's division, your testosterone has to be below a certain level. And then when it comes to sports like, let's say, rugby, ang decision ng World Rugby is hindi pwedeng mag-compete ang transgender sa women's events nila because it really poses danger to the other women kapag transgender ang kasama nila, nagtatakol sa kanila sa mga bagay na ganon. And of course, meron kang sport katulad ng equestrian. Sa equestrian naman, ever since talagang magkalaban ng babae at lalaki, walang distinction yan at all. So, it's very sport specific and it's all science based. So the IOC also relies a lot on the international federations for these decisions because they're truly the technical experts at their sports. And nung pinayagan nung IWF na mag-compete si Laurel Hubbard, then the IOC also in partnership with the International Federation, papayag din.
Well, nabanggit ni Bob, I will just comment, nabanggit ni Mikey yung sa World Athletics. Totoo yun dahil yung tiga South Africa, yung si Semenya, pinagbawal.
Pastor Semenya.
Recently, meron din tiga Uganda na hindi Alam mo, very complicated issue dahil kasi it touches on one's basic human rights.
Dito, I think that situation is more sensitive kasi they're biologically hermaphrodites, diba? Hindi sila transgender.
Yeah. Kasi, for example, they want to level the playing field. Siyempre, sabi nga, ibaba mo yung testosterone level mo bago ka mag-compete sa mga babae. Kasi you have unusually high testosterone. Hindi naman gusto ng tao yun nangyari sa kanya. That is something that happened to him. Kaya nagahalo ang science, human rights, and all of this. It's a complex matter. In fact, it's something that always engenders a lot of discussion. Siguro, maybe we can ask kang Taekwondo, si Monsur, would that be a problem in Taekwondo, in transgender? O meron
I haven't encountered or heard of any news that there's a Taekwondo athlete fighting in the ring that's transgender. I haven't encountered any news. Maybe some of the officials of the PTA or the coaches, I don't know. But in my experience and my discussions with other Taekwondo coaches and athletes and trainers, that never came across. There were handicapped fighters that compete in the Paralympics or competitions for handicapped athletes, but transgender athletes in Taekwondo, I haven't encountered, and I don't know what the ruling will be of the World Taekwondo if something like that comes up. I no experience on that. No experience on that. But I have a question, Tito. Wasn't Nancy Navalta part of track and field and had an issue
Yes,
with testosterone's level that were higher than a woman, and she was disqualified or something?
Yes, that happened many years ago. She's back in La Union. I think she is a coach.
Okay.
She's a coach, although she prefers to be considered a man. So that's her choice. That's her choice.
Okay.
In our case, it just wasn't fully developed. I mean, they weren't sure, right, whether it was male or female.
Yes, that's true. That's
level always dictated that she was more male.
Mm.
Well, fortunately, that did not happen during my time.
Sorry. I know we're totally off topic, but I know that eventually this will be, coming up in the future Olympics. You're not going to hear, the end of it, and probably in palarong pambansa, people are going to start talking about this. It's definitely something that is happening, little by little. We've seen it in the beauty pageants, and we haven't seen it yet. Women wanting to participate in the men's arena, whether they're going to be, boxing or taekwondo, always the one way or the other.
Sige. We're down to our last two questions. So I'd like to go back to the question. We have a question here from Mr. Enchong Formoso. He says, I think grassroots sourcing depends on the ability of specific sport support. One of the goals that we wanted in this Archer Talk of the Olympics was to be able to open the eyes of our listeners, our participants, the private sector, the government, to see the support that is needed by the athletes. So my question is, ano ba ang pangangailangan ng mga atleta in terms of financial support? Not only during their training, but throughout their career. Kasi maraming donors dyan, magbibigay lang pag malapit na Olympics o kundi man may isang event na gustong kaya nilang participate in. The athletes incur difficulties. Some drop out from school while they are in competition or training. Some nawalan ng trabaho. Some, they continue to find other sources. So nagsa-sideline on some businesses na napapabayaan yung training nila or hindi sila makafocus. So my question sa inyong lahat who became athletes, ano ba ang pangangailangan ng isang atleta more than just the airfare para makaparticipate, bumili ng equipment, regular yun. But of course, marami pa kayong pangangailangan in terms of financial support. So maybe you can share this so that we can open up the eyes of the private sector or the government itself na the athletes need financial support all throughout their careers. Hindi lang kung sasali sila in a certain event. Anyone who wants to butt in, just do so.
Juan, you might want to answer this because you've had experience in government also.
Yeah.
You've had experience on so many sides. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is my personal take on your question about we're talking about financial support, right? We're not talking about family or moral support or mental support. I mean, in my experience with my teammates in the 80s, I'm luckier than many of them because I'm a little bit more fortunate than them when it comes to standing in society or community, and they don't come from a really well-to-do family, and a lot of them had to bow out early because they had to be responsible to earn a living, to work, to support the family, to pay bills in their house. And some of them, I kept saying, why are you retiring so young? You're so talented. Some of them were even better than me. And I would say, continue, let's go to the Olympics together. Let's go for another Asian Games. And some of them would say, hanggang dito na lang kami, Mon. We need to do other things to survive in this world than just doing sports. Now, if you have targeted and have recognized the potential of this athlete, that in 4 years from now, he can win a couple of SEA Games medal, gold medal, he can win the Asian Games, bronze, silver, or gold, he can make it to the Olympics. We should find a way to take care of them, for them not to worry about, where they're going to get their electric, to pay, who's going to pay their electric bill, who's going to pay their food at home, who's going to pay their rent. And their mind is just focused on training and competition, and that's all they're thinking. Sleep, eat, train, and that's all you have to do. And then when your moment of greatness comes, you do your best, you perform, then you bring honor to the country. Now, if we can take care of these athletes that we see potential in, Heidelin is a perfect example. I mean, Onyok is a perfect example. They came from humble beginnings, but look where they are now. They're one of the greatest Filipino athletes that ever, represented us in the Olympics, and they've won medals. And there's many of them now, which the boxers that won now, and they're from less fortunate families, and yet they're able to succeed. Imagine if they're given the same support, and they don't have to worry about other things just to survive in this world, and all they have to do is focus on training. I think they can go on and on and on until they're 30 years old, 35 years old, until their body cannot. And then after they retire, I'm very sad to see that a lot of them, when they retire, they get lost. They don't know what to do. They can't figure out, what's my next move, what's my next career. I'm 35 years old, I'm done. Where do I go from here? Nobody's guiding them. There's no guidance, there's no mentorship. And when they're done, they're on their own. And they're not as lucky as Mikey or Christine or myself, that we're able to figure out things, what we have to do next in our life. No one was teaching us what to do. Hey, this is what you do next. We had to figure out. And we're lucky that we're able to do that. But a lot of them, like I said, it's very sad for me to see my teammate, Leopoldo Cervantes. He's in the hospital. He has COPD, emphysema, and he's begging for medicines. I'm glad now that there's some people coming up to him and helping him. I'm happy that after 25 years, Onyok is getting whatever he deserves to get 25 years ago. And I kept talking about that, and to sports writers, hoping that somebody would hear me and help Onyok, help Leopoldo Cervantes. It was sad to hear that Anthony Villanueva, when he was passing away, he wanted to sell his Olympic medal to buy medicines. I mean, it's sad for me when I see my fellow Olympians or athletes being degraded to a really they're like heroes to us. I mean, look how happy we were, and we were celebrating when Heidelin won the gold. I mean, I myself was on tears when she was on stage, you know, performed that lift, and she was in the, you know, podium, and then and we can't. It's not in the life of me to see. If I was in position of power or in position of I can help privately, if I was a top businessman, I'll figure out a way to make sure that even after they retire, they have something to continue with their life, to be proud of. Like Mikey said, whatever you learn as an athlete, you can use it when you're going into business, in your family, and how you carry yourself daily. I mean, values you learn there is really, you can't learn that in school. I mean, how you handle this.
Let's listen to Heidelin, because she was in this particular situation years before she took the gold. Maybe Heidelin, share mo sa akin, sinasabi mo before, the difficulties na pinagdaanan mo para lang nakita ko yung nagbabarbell ka using athletic bag or water bottles kasi wala kang suporta from the others, and the difficulties you had to worry about your payments sa renta sa bahay, sa pamilya. Baka yun, share mo sa amin kasi ito yung mga gusto namin ma-impart sa mga nakikinig na tutulong talaga tayo.
Semento pa. Semento pa, barbell ni Heidelin.
Opo. Para po sa akin kasi medyo naging mahirap lang kasi nga after kong manalo nung Rio Olympics, tumuloy ako para sa Tokyo 2020, and syempre siguro medyo naging mahirap yun sa sports community or sa sports agency kasi nga parang ako yung first, di ko alam kung ako yung first nung gumawa nun after manalo or for how many years na walang silang idea kung paano gawin yun. So, then sabi ko nga na hindi ko kaya mag-isa. Kailangan ko ng kasama. Pero syempre, kung ako lang mag-isa maglaro, medyo mahirap yun. So, kailangan ko ng tao na makakatulong sa akin para ma-achieve yung gold medal na mananalo sa Olympics. So, yung sa akin para maging eye-opener ito na after ko manalo sa Tokyo 2020 na hindi kaya ng atleta lang. Kailangan niya ng kasama, kailangan niya ng support ng government, kailangan niya ng support ng private sponsors. And kung tatanungin saan namin ilalagay yung pera, syempre, first, as an athlete, may allowance kami. Yes, may allowance kami. Pero may pamilya din kami na
nag-freeze.
Okay, I think nag-freeze tayo. But anyway, timely naman yung mga sagot. So siguro, last tanong ko na lang do sa athletes. We're coming to our end. Natanggap ba ninyo yung mga pinangako sa inyo? Onyo, siguro, well, the other athlete, wala na si Carlos Yulo. Tapos naghang.
Still there.
Heidelin, are you still there?
Ayan si Kaloy.
Si Kaloy nandyan, no? Ang tanong siguro huling tanong lang ngayon is, tanggap ba ninyo yung mga pinangako sa inyo? Kaloy siguro, and Heidelin will be the best to answer their question. Si Onyo, may hinahabol ngayon para naibigay ba sa'yo, Onyo? Pinag-uusapan.
Ayun, sir. Siyempre yung yung pinangako ng Congress, sir, na 2.5. Tapos yung pinangako din ng Philippine Navy na scholar, hindi ko rin nakuha. Tapos yung binigyan naman ako ng bahay, kaso lang yung titulo wala pa rin po.
Okay. Ikaw naman, Kaloy, tanggap mo ba?
Sorry.
So, si Heidelin, we lost Heidelin. But anyway, before we end our presentation, are there any other questions from the panelists that you'd like to ask?
Bob, I no question, but I just like to comment that because a lot of these comments touch on on the work that I used to do and continue to do, which is analysis of the sports situation. Mabuti na lang yung sinasabi ni Onyo na hindi na ibigay, hindi nung panahon ko. Kasi lahat ng pinangako ng Philippine Sports Commission sa kanya na nilalaman ng batas na ibigay. Yung binanggit ni Onyo, sa iba na yon, sa Kongreso na rin.
Yung kay chairman po, wala naman natraso si chairman sa akin. Absoluto si chairman sa akin.
Kaya nga medyo, sabi ko, teka muna, baka mamaya madamay ako dito.
Pero lagi naman yun, chairman, lagi naman po binabanggit ko po yung Philippine Sports. Okay naman po yun.
Okay, salamat.
Yan lang po yung mga nasa labas po.
Okay, thank you. Kanina, nakita ko yung comment ni kaibigang Toto Africa, na dating presidente ng Philippine Amateur Fencing Association, at sinabi niya, hindi lang naman dapat sports for all. Sabi niya dapat sports by all. Well, siyempre, sports for all meaning very inclusive of sports at egalitarian yan para sa lahat. Dapat, ang theory, a person who wants to play the sport of his choice should be able to play it with very little hindrance. Ngayon, yung kanina pinag-uusapan, yung grassroots at saka yung elite sports, madalas kong pinapakita yan sa mga presentation ko sa mga Rotary clubs, yung movement from left to right, from mass-based going to the right, which is elite sports. In other words, they feed each other. Pero, katulad na sinabi ni Mikey kanina, ilan lang ang pwedeng umabot sa Olympics. At ang ating mga atleta, ilan ba tayo ngayon? 110 million. Yung mga 110 million, yung ating mga atleta, yung athletes pool na sinusuportahan ng PSC, siguro marami na yung 3,000. So that is 0.000000001% of the Philippine population. So kung ikaw ay isang policy maker, tinitingnan mo kung paano matutulungan yung mga athletes na yon sa elite sports, considering the overall need of the country. Ngayon, government just has to make a decision, a policy decision, on how much to allot for sports. Mga ibang bayan, ginagawa nila percentage of gross development product, GDP, gross domestic product. Ginagawa natin yan for ating debt, for our other spending in agriculture, infrastructure. Government siguro has to make that basic decision there. And from that percentage of the gross domestic product, how much of that to allocate for mass-based and how much to allocate for elite sports. Alam niyo, again, sinabi ni Mikey kanina, hindi lang naman puro medalya yan eh. Ang iniisip natin yung overall welfare ng sambayanan. Meron akong istorya na lagi kong inuulit. Noong ang Russia, nag-champion sa swimming. Ito, andyan ang swimmer natin, si Christine. Sa Olympics, they won the most medals in swimming in one Olympics. I think it was in Moscow, where the US boycotted. Lumabas, panalo sila ng maraming gold medal. Pero yung pala, ang Moscow had the highest rate of drowning per capita. So in other words, hindi talaga marami nagsiswimming. Kung hindi, may piling-pili. Remember, that's a totalitarian state. Dictatorship na may piling-pili at state-owned athletes yan. At ginawa lang propaganda yung mag-champion sa swimming, most medals. What I'm saying is this. Hindi po natin pwedeng kalimutan yung nasa ibaba. At ang pinakamalaking trabaho dyan sa baba ay nasa Department of Education sapagkat yung PE nasa kanila at sabi nga ni Christine yung eskwela. Okay? Nandyan yan. At mga LGU. Yung sa framework na lagi kong binabanggit, ang pinakamalaking trabaho dyan, ang problema po ng Philippine Sports, hindi lang po sa Philippine Sports Commission. Hindi. Ang sagot nasa labas. Katulad ng Department of Agriculture, pag magpo-produce po ng palay, ng bigas, wala po ang problema sa kanila. Ang problema nasa kalye, DPWH, nasa processing, nasa Department of Trade. Dito ang problema, kung tatawag natin problema, yung maging priority ang PE sa Department of Education. Katulad ngayon, we only have 40 minutes of PE a week. Bakit? Monday, magsisimula sa music. Tuesday, magsisimula sa araling panlipunan. Wednesday, magsisimula sa sports. Monday, babalik dun sa music. Paikot-ikot. In some other countries, it's 1 hour a day. You know, you cannot do that 40 minutes a week in a country like the United States, Australia, Europe. Magagalit sa inyo yung mga magulang. You know, like in Australia, you're not an Australian if you do not engage in at least one sport religiously. Ganun ka, sports-oriented sila. So, marami pong policy issues ito. Marami. Lahat gusto nating tulungan. Yung ang pagsuporta sa atleta habang sila ay atleta, problema na. Puproblemahin mo rin ngayon kung ano mangyayari sa kanila after their career as athletes. So, napakarami po. At kailangan po yan talaga real sit down. Now, during our time, we prepared a master plan for Philippine sports, which we thought was a political master plan. It was the first ever master plan. Ang nangyari po, nung nagpalit ng administrasyon from Ramos to Presidente Era, yung ating master plan po, nailagay sa circular file sa bazaars. Okay? Hindi na nagamit. So, yan po ang problema. We need a period of continuity and stability. Set a policy on physical education, follow it through for the next 20 years. Set a policy on how much money you will set aside for mass-based sport, follow it through the years. Set a coaching program, follow it through the years. Set a program for building facilities, follow it through the years. Set a program for competitions, yan po ang pinakamahalaga sa atleta. There is no point in training in the most beautiful facilities if you do not compete. Wala pong mangyayari. So I just wanted to say this because kanina pa po, sabi ko, ito yung laging nababanggit no, pag napapag-usapan ang sports development. So, yan na lang. Ang hirap kasi ng pwesto ko, host din ako at the same time. Ano pa, magsasalita pa. So, maraming salamat.
Thank you po. Maraming salamat for that contribution. Go ahead, Christine. Go ahead.
I totally agree with you. Very well said. We're not just looking at an overnight fix here. I mean, this is something that's really going to take decades to happen. But, you know, as I said earlier, if we do start now, it's so hard. You know, actually, it breaks my heart to see all of these. You know, there's funds that come out when the athlete wins, and that's wonderful. That's perfect. But prior to it, I mean, it was maybe not really seen or felt, right? Yan pala, we can have 30, 40, 50 million, you know, that comes out, you know, but I think if we just kind of manage it well, because, you know, unfortunately, athletes, we don't survive. I mean, we can't live forever. We're not going to be GOATs forever. We're only going to be GOAT for a short while. After that, we're going to be forgotten. We're going to have to find a different career. Take advantage of all the GOATs that we have. You know, send them out. Mansur is doing it right now. Send them out. Inspire people, you know, to build, you know, new champions. Because, as we said, we can't survive forever. But yes, long-term goal is really what we need.
Now, you mentioned, Christine, and I presented this in several fora, I think 3 or 4 already. It takes about, at least in our case, sa Patafas, sa track and field, about 40 million pesos for 4 years to train an Olympic athlete. That's about 10 million a year. May kulang pa yan. That's 40 million. Now, if you have 5 of that, training for 4 years, that's 200 million. So it's not cheap. It's not cheap. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sige. To highlight our end of this webinar, we would like to air a congratulatory message from one of the participants that we would like to share as an example of people out there in the private sector or in the government that are willing to help. Noel, can we air that congratulatory message?
Congratulations to all the 19 Philippine delegates to the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. As we continue to grapple with the COVID pandemic, you gave us the much needed boost and inspired us to keep the faith and remain hopeful. We enjoyed rooting for you and cheering you on in every game that you played. It was truly a proud and happy moment for all of us. So, today, staying true to our purpose of enabling everyone to fly, and in celebration of our 25th anniversary, we would like to treat you and your team to a well-deserved break to enjoy the scenic beauty of the Philippines. We are happy to share that we are giving each of you 25 free flights, which you may share with your families and friends. Because we know that behind every athlete is a great support system. So it's only right that you get to celebrate and travel with your teammates and families, because at Cebu Pacific, no one gets left behind. Once again, thank you for making Olympic moments happen, not just for Cebu Pacific, but for our entire country.
All right, we have come to an end. That seems to be an appropriate ending, and I hope we have all listened to the participants and our guests this afternoon. I would like to give 1 minute to each of our guests as a parting word and as an acknowledgement for their presence this afternoon. Can we start with Mikey? Just a parting words from your end.
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to be part of this discussion, because I think we were able to touch on a lot of topics that don't normally get discussed in different conversations. And I want to thank Tito Popoy also for his statement. You know, I know it's a difficult position for him to be in, host, and this time as a resource person, but the information you shared is truly valuable. And I hope it puts things into perspective. A lot of us are very emotional when we react to these successes, but yes, you're right. There has to be a way that we would support sports in general, not just, you know, an effort of an individual athlete or after a victory, like what Christine mentioned. Of course, these are welcome, but it would be nice for everyone who is interested. And we realize that it's not possible for us to ask the private sector to contribute in a general way. But if there is anyone out there who is interested in a specific sport, who is interested in sports towards a particular goal, all of us in the sports community would be so happy to help achieve that, because you know it would not only be covering one base but more than you might think. So we're very grateful for the interest that is being shown, and we hope that this would just continue to grow, and we would be happy to have these continuing conversations with all of you. So thank you so much.
Mansoor? Nakamute ka pa. You're on mute.
Sorry. I'd like to say thank you for the invitation. I'm proud to be a Lasalite, Animal Lasal. Tito Popoy, thank you for the cup, and always proud to be in the Hall of Fame of Lasal for sports. Everything that Mikey said, I listened to all of you. You all spoke very well. I'd like to say sorry lang if I got kind of emotional about athletes' life. My heart really goes out for the athletes, because I've had plenty of experience of dealing with athletes that are really great, and they just had to stop at a young age. And I hope people who are listening would care enough to take care of our athletes, bring our sports program to a higher level, because I really believe sports is one of the best nation building things that we can do for our people. And when Heidelin won the gold, everybody's so proud, everybody's happy, everybody's crying, everybody's celebrating. It can bring a nation together. We need a lot of sports heroes, and I hope in the coming Olympics and the coming international competitions, whether it's SEA Games or Asian Games or World Championships or World Games, we will discover new talents and we'll have new heroes that eventually can inspire the youth, the next generation and the next generation. We need people like this for the youth to look up to. So thank you for having me. Even I belong in the generation of the 80s athletes, and my time is different from the time of Heidelin, but thank you so much. And thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Christine?
Okay, mine will just be short and sweet. Once again, thank you. So nice to see all the familiar faces that I grew up with and that have helped me on my journey or during my time as a Philippine athlete. Thank you so much. And of course, if you guys ever need us to help you in any way, I mean, once an athlete, always an athlete, and we're always happy to share the lessons that we've learned, not only with yourself, but of course with the nation as well. It's our turn to pay back. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Si Onyo, panghuling salita. Marinig ka naman namin ulit.
Yeah, una-una maraming salamat po sa pag-invite sa amin. At maraming salamat dito po sa Basto po. Tsaka siyempre, congratulations din po sa kay Heidelin at sa lahat po ng kasamahan ko sa boksingero at boksingera. Congratulations sa inyo at sa lahat po na nag-participate sa Tokyo Olympics. Congratulations po sa kanilang lahat. At sana po pagpatuloy nyo pa rin sa susunod na Olympics at marami pa tayong makuha ang medalya.
Maraming salamat. We seem to have lost the signal from Heidelin.
She ran out of data. She texted me.
So it's unfortunate, but nevertheless, we were happy that she joined us. Si Carlos Yulo naman is because he's in Japan, and I think he has a very strict training schedule. There was a possibility he mentioned that he may have to leave earlier. So thank you na rin to both Heidelin and Carlos Yulo for joining us this afternoon.
Bob, may I also say something?
Yes, go ahead. Sure.
Kasi it kept on repeating and repeating itself, especially what happens to the athlete after their career. And Anthony Villanueva was mentioned. Anthony Villanueva, when I was at the age of 9 and 10, was my sparring partner in boxing. He was 12 years old. I was 9 years old, so he was rather big. We were sparring at the Philippine Boxing Association gym near San Sebastian. So we grew up together. But when I saw him again on my way to the Atlanta Olympics, he was a security guard at the Philippine Center in New York. And when we talked, he said, he does not remember me, of course, na sabi ko, Anthony, isa ako doon sa mga ginulpi mo eh. Dito sa kanang itong itong mata ko. Hindi, of course, he does not remember. And I asked him to come home, and he came home, and we had a hard time really trying to support him. And that is something that I'm sure everyone else doesn't want to happen for our athletes, to our athletes, because nakakaawa eh. In fact, I told him, bakit hindi ka tumuloy being a professional boxer? Sabi niya, alam mo, mahirap eh. Onyok, sabi niya, mahirap maging boksingero. Mahirap, sabi niya, maghahanap buhay na lang ako ng iba. So, I'd like to end with that thought. But the athletes are always in our minds and in our hearts in trying to figure out what can we do to give them the best deal while they're athletes, while at the same time, what can we do to help prepare them for their life after athletes? It's like a cradle-to-grave situation. And it will take a lot of resources and a lot of humanity, compassion, to really treat them well. I just like to end with that thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Boy.
Bob, I think
Now,
Mikey has comment.
yes, go ahead, Mikey.
Yes, I really wanted to say something earlier, but now I think I have to because Tito Popeye brought the topic back. I want to give an example of a country that is very successful internationally because I have a friend who is going through this kind of life now. She was 9 when her country, her city, thought that she would have talent in her sport. So they took her from her family and made her live in a training facility where she was allowed to see her family twice a year. She was 9. When she was 13, they thought she could be an elite athlete. So they brought her to the main city of their country where she was allowed to see her family once a year. By the time she was an older teenager, she was winning world championships and she became an Olympic champion. After winning medals for her country, her government decided they would employ her in government and take care of her family. But she had to comply with everything they said. She didn't have the option to have her coach, her trainer, her anything. She just had to comply. But her government supported her family and her government provided everything she needed to be a champion. But that's quite extreme. And I don't believe that's a culture that's applicable to ours. But I want to also say and mention that this issue is not something that is exclusive to us. Whether that's a comfort or not, there are efforts being done by the IOC after recognizing that there is such an issue like this. And for example, the IOC Athlete Career Program, these are seminars where different athletes from all over the world are taught the importance of being able to have a talent or a skill outside of sports, because when you retire from sport, and sometimes it's at a young age, you still have to have a life. So you have to be able to develop certain skills, but you can determine what these skills are, or even what your likes and interests are with a program they have called Power Up. We have some top sponsors, like for example, Airbnb, that also provide opportunities for income for athletes. And then there are partnerships also with human resource companies that help source out, athletes so that they have jobs, they're trained, they're given jobs, but then they have to perform and keep those jobs. The different top sponsors, like for example, Coca-Cola, they employ athletes also as part of the partnership with the IOC. So these are different ideas that I've brought up also with the POC Athletes Commission, that these are efforts that they can try, the best practices, they can try to adapt in a local setting so that, we can also see how we can use these different ideas and turn them into opportunities for our athletes. So thank you for allowing me to add that.
Thank you too, Mikey. All right. Now that our athletes have made some historic wins and have shown what they are capable of, it's time we reinvigorate our sports programs and give them the support they deserve. We have such incredible talent here in the Philippines, and I think that with the proper financial support for training and learning, we can do even better the next time around. I know younger athletes are now inspired to try their hand at their passions and make an Olympic showing too. After all, it's every athlete's dream to wear their country's colors at the biggest sporting event in the world. Thank you very much for our guests, Mikey, Mansour, Christine, Onyok, Kaloy, and Heidelin. Thank you too to the conveners, George Gonzalez, Cesar Mayo, Tony Sumbingco, Popoy Wico, Al Santa Clara, Billy Del Rosario, and Mon Sica. This was a very, very productive afternoon, and I hope we learned some lessons. And for those who participated, to be able to pursue further what was discussed here and see if we can do more medals in the next Olympics. Maraming salamat po, and good afternoon to everyone, or good evening to everyone.
By the way, may we invite you to our next Archer Talks Forum, the 7th one on August 24. together with our friendly school, Ateneo, we are hosting a forum with our guest speaker, Vice President Lenny Robredo. Thank you.
Maraming salamat again.